Hey everybody, Joseph Rothschild here, aka Mono Bluetron, back from Thanksgiving break with another episode of 10-Minute Testing. So, it's no secret that Yu-Gi-Oh's in a bit of a two-deck format right now. I'm talking, of course, of ABC and Metaphors, two decks that are incredibly powerful and really choking the ever-loving life out of the format. Usually this is okay for me because I always have Magic the Gathering as a reprieve, but Standard is basically a two-deck format right now as well. So, I've been spending the week eating turkey, getting fat, and really sort of trying to push the boundaries of what is and is not playable. And as Artifact Kozmo has continued to top during this week, I think it's finally time that I investigate this deck and see its potential. Let's jump into Deck Edit, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So before I talk about the individual card choices in this deck, I want to talk a little bit about Kozmo in and of itself. Now, for those of you who don't remember, Kozmo is a really powerful strategy last format. It, alongside Monarch, BA, and Pepe, made up the four best decks in the format by a lot. Now, on paper, it sounds like Kozmo should have good matchups against all of those. Against BA, it can make a 3,000 attack guy that can't be farfa'd. Against Monarch, it doesn't care if you lock it out of the extra deck because so much power is concentrated in the main. And against Pepe, I don't know, one of its monsters is an MST. However, it soon became clear that was not nearly enough. Making one monster and attacking with it every turn isn't particularly good against a deck that can recur Dante, and routinely, since your cards cost life points to activate, you would just get barbared out of the game. Against Monarch, sure, Domain was originally a good matchup, but pretty quickly Monarch players started transitioning to XYZ variants that cared a lot less about locking you out of your extra and a lot more about killing you with a raw power that Kozmo could not overcome. And against Pepe, well, I mean, as anyone who has ever played against Monkey Board can assure you, MST their scales is not a viable game plan. So it kind of occupied the fourth rung of the four-deck format for a while, and while there were some cool innovations at the end of the era, it turned out a lot of the things that we thought were strengths of the deck were actually giant glaring weaknesses. The deck's inability to make Xyz was great for budget players, but also meant that it didn't have access to things like Castel, or Utopia the Lightning, or 101 that routinely were ways to get out of cards that would ruin Kozmo's day. Additionally, because Kozmo so much relied on really flashy Dark Destroyer Destroy Itself plays, its turn ones were routinely really bad. And, despite innovations like Card of Demise at the end of its lifespan, it was never really enough to compete. So, despite ban lists gutting the deck to some capacity, it still keeps showing up. And I don't know what's happened until I looked at the decks a little more in depth and realized inclusion of the Artifact engine solves almost all of Kozmo's problems. If we isolate the two Kozmo problems as inability to make a really good Xyz engine and inability to have a good turn one, Artifact solved both of those. By including more rank 5 guys and streamlining Kozmos to the point where it can consistently make Slip Rider, you can ensure a lot of really good rank 5 monsters show up on your side of the field every game. And by drawing all these cards with Card of Demise and setting things that can be activated on your opponent's turn like Scythe, you can really prevent the bad turn one from ruining the entire game. So let's go through the individual card choices. We have one copy of Kozmo Dark Destroyer, one copy of Forerunner, one copy of Wicked Witch, one copy of Dark Lady, one copy of Farm Girl, one copy of Strawman, basically one copy of all of the playable Kozmos. Next we have three copies of the good ones, Slip Rider and Tin Can. Slip Rider, of course, very good in this deck because it can make rank 5s including Cyber Dragon Infinity, and Tin Can good for obvious reasons. Next we have the smallest artifact engine available, two Scythes, a Morale Tech, and a Begal Tech. I love these numbers. I've never wanted three Scythes. I did play with it for a while and found it incredibly clunky. Begal Tech I don't like, but he's a necessary evil for hands where you brick into multiple copies of artifacts. We have three copies of Card of Demise, an innovation that was made toward the end of the deck's lifespan. Last format comes back in full force. It's very powerful here because you can set the artifacts you draw. Three copies of Pot of Duality, similar idea. Get the card that you need, and since you're not special summoning your first turn anyway, it doesn't matter. Two copies of Artifact Ignition, basically taking the place of Twin Twisters here. They're just a little bit better. One copy of E-Telly because we have Tin Cans. Three copies of Cosmotown because we're Kozmo. Three copies of Artifact Sanctum to get our sides at instant speed. Two copies of Cosmojo. I wanted three but couldn't find room for it. One of the best card in the format. Three Call of the Haunted. This card's incredible, and I really want to play probably a couple more copies of this, but we're at 40 right now. If there was an argument for going to 42, it would be for Oasis of Dragon Souls. Finally, we have two Solemn Strikes and a Warning. In the extra, we've got Cyber Dragon Nova to go into infinities, 1 Shark Fortress, 1 Durandal, 1 Volcasaurus, 2 Pallades, 1 Ardreus, 1 Tyrios, 1 Zenmeo, 1 Frozen Ladies of Justice that I don't think I've ever gone into, 1 Tolmi, and 2 copies of Gaia Dragon the Thunder Charger to push for damage. So with this wealth of options, we kind of have the ability to go into the same type of effects like Castel and 101 that we weren't able to because we don't have access to rank 4. So let's jump into the games and see if it fixes our problems. So for our first match, we're up against Dark Magician, a deck that I think is way overplayed. Our opponent is playing Silent Magicians as well, which I can't imagine are particularly good, alongside with Vanity's Fiend, which I'm glad he didn't draw. We have drawn okay, but not great. It gets much better once we draw this Card of Demise, because it gets this Forerunner out of our hand for our call, and it allows us to set this emergency teleport. So I'm feeling pretty good. I have access to Forerunner, Ignition to kill Scythe, or a spell. Once he plays Rod, I'm like, well, I know what this Ignition is going towards. So I'm going to go ahead and set this Moraltech. We have 2 Scythes that are kind of stranded. This is why we play Bagaltech, folks. If we draw another Ignition, suddenly we have the ability to do that. He's going to go ahead and play Silent Magician and attack me. I'm like, well, I can make Forerunner take the hit, but I don't really feel like it. We'll see if I can draw into anything cuter. I'm going to get Forerunner at end step, however, because I do want to gain some life points. During my draw step, I draw a bad Kozmo, and I'm like, well, thank God Kozmo Town's broken. Let's just shuffle that back, and oh, wow. Just a quick reminder that this is a one of. So we have E-Telly. I don't activate it here because I kind of want to not get it negated by Silent Magician. I'd prefer to have this out of my life before I try to emergency teleport. He's going to destroy my Forerunner. Well, that's half the battle because now we can get Slip Rider. Slip Rider is going to go ahead and get Moraltech, which can destroy the Silent Magician and clear the way for our emergency teleport should we choose to activate it. He's going to get level 8. I don't really have a problem with level 8. It's going to do some damage, but not really anything important. Quick reminder here, you probably should be killing Slip Rider just because it represents Cyber Dragon Infinity much more often. I understand it hurts to kill a Kozmo, but you gotta do what you gotta do. I'm gonna, at end step, E-Telly my way to a Tin Can, and then the Tin Can is going to go ahead and get me a copy of Slip Rider, which I will go into right now. That also allows me to destroy this set card, which is Scythe, and get that back. I don't think he's going into the extra deck very often, being Dark Magician, but certainly having another 5-star on the board is good. We're going to go ahead and draw a strike, which is pretty great. I put this Tin Can on the field after making CDI and taking his level 8, and now we're kind of in business. Like, we're doing damage every turn, we have a negate every turn, we have a Tin Can active that he has to do something about, or else I'll just grind him right the hell out of this game. He draws Navigation, sets it, and ends his turn. We're going to Tin Can, go ahead and get Kozmo Town, you know, classic. You want to get the spells off a Tin Can. We have something to go into anyway. So for his last thing, he's going to Magician's Navigation, but this is just a Hail Mary play. I'm going to go ahead and Cyber Dragon Infinity the hell out of that, and we have won the game. So this game is a game I'm really glad I didn't have to play in paper. Our opponent is playing Fluffles, and I hope you're ready for some long-ass chains. We've opened really well. We have a Tin Can and a Dark Destroyer. Quick pointer, if you want to ever represent that you've opened Dark Destroyer, just don't pick Dark Destroyer in your Tin Can activation. We have, of course, a Pot of Duality, which we will use to not take vanities like a greedy sack. I'm going to go ahead and take this Call of the Haunted because I want to reborn something with Tin Can. We send a Forerunner to the graveyard, and I'm like, that's a good one. I'll take that. Our opponent has a hand that's all right at setting up, but he decides to go for it first and then set up afterwards. I can respect that. Unfortunately, as he uses Polymerization, I'm not able to artifact Sanctum, because if I did, the chain would go Sanctum, Resolve to get Scythe, Poly, then Scythe effect would activate after Polymerization has resolved, so it doesn't really do what I want it to. So I'm going to sit on it. He makes Tiger to destroy my entire back row. I am like, well, here we go, time for a chain. He starts with Fluffle Cat, and I go, well, time to banish for Dark Destroyer. Then we will Sanctum for a Scythe. Then we will Call of the Haunted for Forerunner. That's going to mean that we get Forerunner's effect, we get Scythe's effect, and we get Dark Destroyer's effect. So all of this resolves, and then everything gets destroyed. So we have another set of resolutions we have to deal with. We have Scythe's effect. We have Artifact Sanctum's ability. When it is destroyed by an effect while it is in the spell and trap card zone, you can destroy a card on the field. We have Forerunner's effect to banish itself and get another card. And of course, we have Dark Destroyer's effect to destroy a monster on the field. Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and resolve those as well and get Dark Lady to prevent any, like, dog shenanigans. And he just decides to give up. So this third match is basically just a love letter to the artifacts. Our opponent is playing Perform Pals, just Perform Pals. I really like this deck. I think it has a lot of really cool OTK potential. However, as the winner of a 16-man Jaden Yuki starter deck pod at Worlds, I can only say that he's picked the wrong opponent today. We've opened 2 copies of Sanctum and a Scythe, so I don't know, maybe Begaltech will be good here. We're going to go ahead and open with the classic Tin Can set 4 and add Kozmo Town to our hand because we're bad and sort of expected to get Slip Rider or something. But hey, that's fine, I'm not mad. He's going to lead with a Abdicator and a King Bear. Reminder, at any time here I can use Morale Tech, so I'm going to decide to do it after he sets scales. I'm like, I know the deck doesn't play a lot of high-end scales, so we'll go ahead and blow that sucker up. And please, God, don't have the Pendy Impendi, and of course he has the Pendy Impendi. Here it goes. So now we're just sort of at the mercy of him. I do have a Solemn, which is great. He's going to summon 1, and I'm like, I kind of hope to Solemn some Pendulum guys, but hey, Solemn Warning the Bull is actually pretty important. So I feel all right about that. And because he doesn't have another monster, I do actually get to use another Tin Can activation and potentially not die here. I will Slip Rider as fast as possible just to blow up one of the set cards. I feel pretty confident that I'll be able to prevent these scales from getting too out of hand on my next turn, so we'll get the Call of the Haunted, which is pretty good for us. So we're going to play Kozmo Town. We're going to get back our copy of Tin Can. We're going to Sanctum our way to a Scythe, and then we're going to go into an Ardreas. Now, Ardreas can kill either of the, scales. We're going to destroy Magical Abdicator now that it has a bunch of counters on it, and then we'll summon Tin Can again. Now, at this point, we're in basic full control of this game. We have a lot of cards. They're disruptive, and they have nothing. He's going to summon Skullcrabat Joker, use its effect. I will destroy the Perform Pal King Bear to make this a little harder for him, and he decides that's all he wants to play. So we're back with the deck. Now, I want you to know I did not dream up this strategy. It is well represented on YGO Top Decks, a site that I would encourage you to visit if you want to see what's winning. I really like this strategy. It's enough that I'm considering buying into it. I think CDI is cheap now, so that sort of tips the scales a little bit for me. The Artifact Engine felt incredibly good. I didn't show all of the games I played, but rest assured there were a lot where they were playing like Lightsworn or something like that, and I would just flip a Sanctum, get a Scythe, and the whole game would be over. They're incredibly powerful threats that I think really do a good job of preventing some of the old weaknesses of Kozmo from resurfacing. The rank 5 suite feels really good. There were a lot of games where cards like Wind Up Zenmeo were really powerful. Durandal even made an appearance in some of the off-camera games and was very strong. I really just think this is the way of the future for Kozmo. It allows it to play a lot of the cards that we found out were really powerful in the strategy, like Card of Demise and Pot of Duality at the end of last format, alongside a lot of the new cards that prevent things from getting out of hand in the new format. And in a world where all of the meta threats are like extra deck dependent, things like Metaphors being able to recur themselves, things like ABC being able to, well, go into ABC, playing a deck that's really good at making CDI and really good at making Scythe seems really strong. So that's that. I hope you enjoyed the first episode after a week-long Thanksgiving reprieve. I hope you enjoyed my passive-aggressive attempts to get Konami to print a third playable archetype, and most of all, I hope you just enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to give me a like, a comment, or subscribe. It really helps me out, and if you want to see me play the decks I play on this show on stream, feel free to follow me on Twitch, where I stream every Tuesday and Thursday from 9:30 a.m. to noon, with the exception of this Tuesday, because I have a job interview. Link is in the description, and finally, if you want to see a certain deck or archetype played on a future episode of this show, let me know in the comments section below, and I will do my best to accommodate you. Otherwise, I will see you on Wednesday.